Good morning, beautiful people, and welcome to another episode of the show, The Reason You Are Broke. This is the show where we have a conversation about your money and your life. We're coming to you live from Montreal, and in each episode, we get you tons of inspiration to keep you motivated as you begin to get intentional with your finances. In today's episode, we talk about mortgages. We're talking about the house you can or cannot afford. Our guest today is Olivia Leke. She's a CPA, that's a chartered professional accountant. She also holds an MBA from Kent State University in Ohio. She's been in Canada for 13 years, and she currently works as a controller in a transport and logistics company. Why do I have her here today? The reason I have her here today on the show, what is it that's so special about her, is that when she got to Canada 13 years ago, it only took her 18 months to buy her first home. She came to Canada as a single mom, single income. Within 18 months, she bought her first home. How did she do it? How did she do it? She shares her story today to inspire you. So as you're joining us, please, all we ask is that you share. We ask you to like if the spirit leads. And if you're on YouTube, you could subscribe. So right now I'm going to bring on Olivia on the show. And please help me welcome Olivia Leke.
Hi everybody.
It's an honor to have you here today.
Same here. I'm honored to be here.
What's your story?
I want to really thank you, Ida, for having me on your show. Thank you for the opportunity. I've always wanted to share my story on this topic because I believe there are lessons and tips that others can, benefit from. I have had the opportunity to share some of this information in the past, but it didn't go as well as I would have wanted. So I'm really happy that you're providing this opportunity for me to share it. Thank you.
We are honored to have you here. People, she bought her house in 18 months, 18 months of arriving in Canada as a single mom. So single moms out there, listen up. You can do this, okay? Come on today. You might have a specific question for Olivia. Put it in the comments. We will get to your questions if you have them. Put them in the comments. Okay, so Olivia is going to go right in with her story. What's your story?
So I came to Canada from the US, actually. I left Cameroon in 2006 to study for my MBA in the US. And I went to the US 5 months pregnant to do that course. And so, I had my baby in the course of doing my MBA. And for my MBA, I was on an assistantship, and I had a student stipend of $6,500 a year. So $6,500 was my annual income in the US. And if you can imagine that amount divided by 12 months, you would know, how much that comes to, that you have to live on with a child, in my case. Yeah. But at the end of my stay in the US, I was in the US for 18 months for that course. And by the end of it, I had managed to save up $5,000. Now, how I saved $5,000 on an income of $6,500 is a story for another day.
You had $6,500 and you saved $5,000 of that.
Yes, when I came to Canada, that was the savings I brought from the US. And so when I arrived Canada, I actually, believe it or not, the Canadian dollar at the time was stronger than the US dollar. So I actually lost money on exchange when I came here. I was so mad. My $5,000 translated to a bit less. So when I got here, the first thing I did was buy a car. I bought an old 1999 Camry because I knew I needed to be able to be mobile, and I needed to be able to not be restricted for that first job because of transportation. So the first thing I did was spend that $5,000 on a 99 Camry. And I actually had to borrow money from my sister's line of credit to register the car, because once I bought the car, there was no money left. I had to borrow $1,000 from my sister's line of credit to register the car and to pay my share of our first rent because before getting a job. So you could say I started off on, $1,000 of debt. You could say.
Yeah.
So my sister was in Montreal, and so when I came, we had to find our own place to live. So we started apartment searching, and she knew the Montreal market. She knew the places that we could afford. So she was guiding the apartment search, and the places she was taking us to see, I felt were places that were just not very nice. There were
those houses. Yeah.
For some people, the kind of car they drive is their thing. Some people like to drive, their car is the big thing that for them. But for me, the place where I live is the big thing for me. I want to live in a place that is, nice and clean with fresh air, that's well maintained, and not fancy. I'm not talking fancy, just nice and clean. And the apartments that we were looking at just did not have those qualities, and I knew that I did not want to live in those kinds of places. So when we were searching, I would see these big, beautiful buildings, and I would say to my sister, "Why don't we go look over there? Let's go ask if they have any if they have any availabilities in that building." And she would say, "Lex, we can't afford that." And I would be like, "How do you know? Have you asked how much it is?" So I dragged her, and we went to one of these high rises, one of these fancy high rises, and rang the buzzer, and we're looking at each other and hoping that nobody calls the cops. And I was like, "Who are these two people coming to ring the buzzer in this fancy place?"
Yes.
So, but I wanted to know. I wanted to know how much does it cost to live in a nice place like that, and what the person, the building person who opened the door, he told us that those are condos and those are not for rent. You have to buy.
All right.
I said, okay, well, how much is it to buy one? and I think he threw out a price that was something like 250,000 in that kind of range. And that didn't faze me. I figured to myself, if people are living there, it means somehow they bought it, right?
Exactly.
So I asked, well, what does it take for me to? And he also said you have to get a mortgage. If you want to buy, you have to get a mortgage. And I'm like, what is a mortgage?
What is a mortgage?
And I asked, okay, so what do I need to get a mortgage? I started asking all these questions. So I got to know that to get a mortgage, you need a down payment, you need to have credit. And I was like, what's credit?
Wait, so all of this was so new to you because you're asking what's a mortgage, what's credit, how do you get it, how do you live here?
Yes, surprisingly, I was somebody, at the time, I was somebody who was, I had a very good education in accounting and finance. And just to show you the extent to which financial literacy, even at the highest levels of education, is not really part of
schools,
educational system. So of course in accounting I'd learned about loans and interest and amortization and all that, but it was never within the context of a consumer.
It was never in the context of personal finance. It's always about how it applies to companies, how it applies to the banks, what are the things you need to check. But bringing it to the level of how it affects you as a consumer, they don't do that in education. Most educational systems don't do that.
Right. And on top of that, I didn't grow up I grew up like you and like most of our audience. We grew up in a country that is cash based. And so there is no, the concept of credit and the concept of mortgages is just non-existent.
Yeah.
We grew up. So we have no idea what those things are and what it entails. But for me, I just wanted to have a nice place to live in. That was my my starting point. That was my point of reference. And so I asked, well, so what do I need to do to have credit? What is credit and what do I need to do to have it? So I got to learn, that credit is basically, a mortgage is borrowing money from the bank to pay for the house and then paying the bank back over time with interest. And credit is a way for the bank to establish whether you are,
able to pay back the money.
whether your
You're
credit
worthy.
is enough
Yes.
to pay off that loan within the time frame that they're going to give it to you.
Yeah.
So I was told that to have credit, you need to have a credit card. Like the easiest way to build credit was to have a credit card.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to the bank and I asked for a credit card, and they gave me a credit card with a credit limit of $500.
Yeah.
Because I'm a new client, new to Canada, and
Yeah.
the $500 that was fine for me. I used it for groceries and just everyday purchases.
Mm-hmm.
But what I did was I paid off the credit card as soon as I got the statement.
Mm-hmm.
So and I just want to say that the that philosophy of paying off the credit card as soon as I got the statement, I've maintained that throughout my 13 years here. So I have never, I basically use the credit card like a debit
card. Yeah.
So whatever.
I think you had that discipline going. So you had the discipline from like way back, knowing that you can't spend money that you don't have. And the only reason you personally got it was because the bank said, this is how you build credit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, we come from a culture where we don't have access to credit.
Yes.
So I was used to, paying things cash and, only spending what you have. So that knowledge and that principle was just, I didn't look at credit cards as extra money.
Yeah. You looked at it just as a means of convenience, a means of you being able to get what it is you wanted, which in essence for you was to buy that house you wanted to buy.
Right.
Yeah.
So in the long term, I have never had to deal with debt because I simply viewed a credit card as money I'm borrowing from somebody, and I don't like owing people. Yes. So I pay off the credit card as the same day I get the statement notification email, I pay it off. So when I'm spending money on a credit card, I know that it's money that I'm paying at the end of the month. I don't even use the 21 days that they give because I want to be done with it.
Yeah. So in your case, you actually went to the bank. So because you and your sister, you went around looking for this information and they told you, hey, you need to get a mortgage. And you're like, what's a mortgage? And now you know what's a mortgage, but to get it, you need credit. And what's credit? And they say, okay, to build your credit, get a credit card, use it, pay. And you did that. And then down the road, you were able to build the credit score within this little 18-month period.
Yes. So, the other thing that I was told I need to get a mortgage is a down payment.
Yes.
So at the time, basing off of the $250,000 that condos were in the area where I lived, which was LaSalle, I did a little. I started looking now into the real estate market to see what how much things really cost. So this $250,000 was for the fancier condos in the high rises. Yeah. So when I looked at what the pricing was at the time, there were condos in the low 200s, and there were also homes in area. The homes in the area where I lived were in the high range. They were unaffordable for me, but there were homes in the town that is just outside of LaSalle, which is Chateauguay, for those who know. There were homes there that cost about the same as a condo on the island of Montreal. So when you go off island in Montreal, things are real estate is a bit lower price.
It's a bit lower, yeah. So you would get the closer you are to like a big urban area, the more expensive the houses there are. So you might want, depending on what your budget is, you might just want to look a little bit on the outskirts of the place you want to live in. So in your case, that was Montreal. You were looking at LaSalle and all of that, and you said, okay, let me just look across the bridge in the South Shore.
Yeah,
which is
right. So I narrowed it down to the fact that for a little bit over 200,000, like between 200 and 230, I could get either a house in Chateauguay or a condo on the island.
Yes.
So based off of that, and I was told the minimum down payment is 5% of what you're borrowing. So I figured to myself, okay, 5% on 200,000, that's $10,000. If I had to, and the 10,000, I simply told myself, if I can save just $500 a month, it means in less than 2 years I would have the 10,000.
Yes.
And at the time, so when I got my first job was paying $33,000 a year, which was another eye opener for me because coming from the US, graduating from an MBA program, I had my classmates in the US who were, I had a classmate who took her first job as a financial analyst with General Motors, and her starting salary was $60,000. So I came to Canada with that as a starting
benchmark for you. Yes.
In my mind, I thought, okay, that's kind of what I'm going to make. And I get here, and I'm told I don't have experience in accounting, even though I had worked 3.5 years in accounting.
You didn't have Canadian experience.
My education, my chartered accounting qualification was yet to be recognized. So I had to start at entry level, and my starting salary was $33,000 a year. And I was also, just like everybody in Canada gets, I was also getting child tax benefits from the government. So, some provinces have their own family allowance programs, and Quebec has a very good one.
Yeah.
And you have the federal one as well. So between the federal
support payments
and the provincial one that I was getting for Quebec, and as a single mom, I was getting a little bit more. So I was getting somewhere around $600 a month for that. And in my mind, I figured, on my salary alone, I should be able to take care of myself and my son just on my salary.
Yes.
Because if I was in a country that didn't have these social benefits, I'm pretty sure I'll be able to take care of my son on that salary.
Yeah.
I mean, I was coming from taking care of him on $6,500 a year, right? So $33,000 was a step up from that. A big step up.
A 6 times step up.
About the 6 times. So I knew I could do it on $33,000. So I said to myself, well, this 600 or so that I'm getting from the government, if I could put a little bit aside for his education fund, then I would still have around $500 to save per month. So what I did right away was I started channeling whatever I was getting from the government. I was channeling it to his education fund and to savings for the down payment. Okay. So I started doing that. And in the end, I was able to save, a little bit more than the 500. So I was able to get that down payment within the 18 months. So by the time the 18 months rolled around, I had everything. I had enough of a credit history. I had a down payment, and I just had to find a house.
And in the process of finding the house, I'm sure there are people who are saying, you can't do it, you can't do it, you can't buy a house.
Oh, there was there was a lot of that. And I was friends with a Canadian guy at the time. And when I mentioned to him that I was, looking for a house to buy, first thing he tells me is, you're never going to get a mortgage. You haven't worked in this country. How long have you been in this country? What, a few months? Even with 1 year, you're never going to get a mortgage. But, when I'm looking for information, and I would say this to everybody who's listening, go directly to the source. Yes. Don't get your information from the streets or from don't stop at getting your information from just people you know. Go directly to the source. So this is this guy telling me I would never get a mortgage. Well, you're not the one giving me a mortgage. I'm getting it from the bank. And if the bank tells me I can get it, then it's the bank that's just like when my sister was telling me we can't afford it. I'm like, well, do you know how much it costs? Have you asked?
Need to go find out.
You have to find out before you.
And you go to the source, because a lot of people are just going to give you opinions, but that's just all it is. It's just opinions. And yes, listen to it, but at the end of the day, you need to go find out what it is what's the information you're really looking for. There are places where you can go find that. So in your case, you didn't just listen to what everybody was saying. You went to the bank and you asked right there.
Yeah, I asked directly from the bank because they're the ones giving the mortgage. So they're the ones who can tell me exactly what I need to do to get it. I would just mention also, when I was saving for the down payment, aside from channeling the family allowances towards it, I also, realized that I have to do a number of cost saving. I had to find ways of saving money because, for you to have money, you either saving it, you either increase your income or you cut on your expenses. Like
You definitely have to cut
that's
expenses.
how it
Because I've
works.
seen people who make a lot of money. And I posted this the other day on Facebook. I said doctors on average make a lot of money, but they are among not the brokest people, but they're super broke. Why is like they make a lot of money, but their expenses are way more
Right.
than the income. You're never going to get ahead with that. So, of course, you need to cut your expenses. A small lifestyle change. I'm seeing here a post from comment from Kennedy. A small lifestyle change that permits us to save gradually can go a long way, which is
That's
so true.
exactly right. And you won't believe the one of the I'm going to tell you one of the the cost saving measures that I decided to implement. I remember when I was growing up, my mother, we had a corridor in the house, and the corridor
Hmm.
was a bit dark. So whenever you're going through the corridor, you had to turn on the lights. And I remember my mother would always go, "Who is in that corridor with lights?" Because she can see that there's lights in the corridor, she knows that there's nobody there, so she would always ask, who is in that corridor with lights? She was
Uh-huh.
always hammering us about turning off the lights in the corridor. So I remember that, and I said to myself, you know what? I'm going to be turning off the lights whenever I'm leaving a room.
Hmm.
I did that, and I swear to you, I noticed like a $10 to $20 reduction in my electricity bill.
From little things that we don't even
Yes,
think
just
about.
from
Like,
turning off the lights when I was leaving a room. That's
yes.
one of the things I did.
Yeah.
Anyway, there were other, more, I would say, substantial things that I did to cut costs. I didn't have cable TV. I cut off. I made sure I was paying the minimum on my phone. I
Hmm.
didn't have, a data plan or anything. My phone was just for calling and texting. So
Yes.
minimum on the phone. Um, I made a very detailed budget of my salary. I took my salary and I detailed exactly what it was getting spent on, and I allocated it in a way that left something over to supplement that 500 that $500 target that
Uh-huh.
I initially set up.
Uh-huh.
Another thing I did was make sure I wasn't paying any banking fees, which is why I love Tangerine Bank,
Oh
because
yeah. You invited me to
there's
that bank.
not only do you never pay fees on your checking account, they actually pay a tiny bit of interest on checking account, believe it or
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
Not only do you not pay any interest, they also have, you can open as many as 5 savings accounts, which really worked well for me because when I was doing the automatic savings, I could open a savings account for down payment to which I'm channeling particular funds. I can open, I can you can open up to 5 savings accounts for different
Yeah.
purposes, and that's one of the reasons I've never been in Njangi, because Tangerine lets me do it automatically, and I guess I would say I have the discipline to do it without touching the money that's going in there,
Yeah. So it
and
really
of
comes
course
down
it
to
makes
our
me a little bit of
habits.
interest as well.
It really comes down to our habits and being intentional and telling yourself, this is my target. You had a target. I want to buy a house. I don't want to live in this neighborhood. I want to buy a house. You had that goal, and then you started looking for ways to make it happen. And you found the little places to save money in. You cut back on you didn't have you say you cut back on cable or you didn't have cable at all.
Um, I cut off cable.
You cut off cable. Okay, your minimum on your phone.
Yeah.
You bank fees. You weren't paying any bank fees. You were getting interest actually on your regular banking. People, those are
Yeah.
little things that people don't think about. And then, for example, the government that sends money for people, there's little assistance that people that we get all the time from the government. You shouldn't count that as money that you want to live on. I mean, if you're strapped for cash, yes, you should live on that. But in your case, you were putting all of that. You were saying, I'm going to live on my salary. I'm going to live on my income. And you're
Mhm.
putting all the extra to this goal that you had set for yourself because you had a goal.
Another thing I had to cut that was very dear to my heart was dancing. At the time, I was going to a dance studio.
Mhm.
I love dancing. And when I decided I wanted to buy a house, I had to cut that. That was one of the expenses that I had to cut off.
A little
One of
lifestyle
the
adjustment
sacrifices I had to make.
for a while.
But
All right, good. So let's see, how do people know? For the people listening there, they might be saying, okay, I'm doing all of those, and that how do I know if I can afford the house? How do I know if I can afford the house? Do you have any advice for that?
well, the simplest way is to one of the things I reason to myself is that I'll have to pay for accommodation costs no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
So whether you're living in an apartment or in a condo or in a house, you have to have a roof over your head. And the more I got to learn about mortgages, the more I realized that, well, if I'm living in an apartment, I'm simply paying the landlord's mortgage. So
Yeah.
why not pay myself? But to know whether you can afford the house you want to buy, I think the easiest way is to look at how much you're spending on accommodation costs. I remember when my sister in Ohio, back some years ago, when she told me how much she was paying for rent in her apartment, I was
Mm-hmm.
taken aback. I said, well, why don't you buy a house? And it had never crossed her mind that she could buy a house.
Mm-hmm.
Because she had just never, it had just never crossed her mind. So
Yeah.
when I put together the numbers and I showed her and I explained to her, about mortgages and down payments and all that, when we put the numbers together, it actually showed that her housing costs, if she
Could be
was
lower.
paying a mortgage, it was actually lower than what she was paying in rent. But that's the US market. I don't think you would get that in Canada.
Yeah, no, right now the Canadian market, especially here in Montreal, is going crazy right now. It's not even the time to think about buying a house now. It's everybody's
Yeah,
paying above asking.
everything is so overpriced.
Yeah.
So if you can look at how much you currently spend on rent and compare that with how much a mortgage for um, a particular amount of monthly payment on a mortgage will be. Plus, the big caveat here is when you're comparing rent to housing costs, housing has a lot of other costs that
Other
an
costs.
apartment
Yeah.
would not have. Like,
Yeah.
you have to consider that the heating bill is going to be bigger, the electricity bill will be bigger, there's property and school taxes in our case here.
Mm-hmm.
There are repairs to be done, things that your apartment landlord would normally take care of. You have to
Yeah. Yeah.
factor all of that into your long-term view of home ownership, and factor that when you're comparing rental versus buying a house and whether you can afford. There are different guidelines. So as an example, when I was looking, the guideline that I found at the time was that your cost of housing, your housing cost shouldn't be more than 27% of your gross income.
Mm-hmm.
The last time I looked it up when I was getting ready for the show, there was a website that said it shouldn't be more than 30 to 32% of your gross income.
Yeah.
But I think these ratios, they're a good guide. But personally, I believe in looking at the hard numbers, taking the dollar amount that you get as a salary and taking the dollar amount of what those housing costs will be and subtracting. Because sometimes these ratios assume a lifestyle that may not be the same as yours.
That is
So
very true.
if you're
Yeah.
somebody who, in our case, we often have to support family back home. So that is an expense that some of these ratios may not be taking into account.
Yeah.
So you really have to use your own numbers for your own situation and factor in the things that you still want to be able to save for, whether it's retirement or the kids' college or helping family back home. You have
Yeah.
to factor all those things
Yeah.
to determine if you'll be able to afford that mortgage.
Yeah. I recommend actually 25%, that you shouldn't be more than 25% of your take home pay, like how much money you physically get into your bank account total for the whole year. I recommend no more than
So that's
25%.
net
But
income and
again,
not
net
gross.
income. Yeah, your disposable income. But at the end of the day, it really is just a guideline. You have to actually put down your own numbers, a zero-based budget, meaning every single dollar that comes in, you put it down. What are the expenses and how much can I comfortably pay for a house? every single month. You need to look at those things. So yes, we're going to give you a general estimate of 25% to 35%. That's a ballpark range, but you have to put the numbers down. That's just a guideline. It's just a guideline. So take that, people, but do your own budget. Contact me. Let's do your thing one-on-one. We could always work on your own numbers as they are. Again, we're not real estate advisors. We're not telling you we're not giving you investment advice, but we're telling you what has worked for us, what we do, what has worked for us, essentially. So take it and apply it to yourself in a way that works best for you. We just have to put that out there. Okay, super. So why do people fall into the trap of buying houses that they cannot afford?
Well, you put that, you captioned it well in your I don't know if you mentioned it in one of your flyers for the presentation, but in my opinion, the very first thing that comes to mind when we talk about people buying what they can't afford is the concept of keeping up with the Joneses.
Oh yeah.
Wanting to keep up with the competition. That person got this, so why would I not get the same?
You want to have the best house in the neighborhood. You want to be. I actually heard somebody here in Montreal. Somebody said, "I have," like, they were talking about themselves. "I have the best house among all the Cameroonians in Montreal. My house is the best." That's the person talking about this. I'm like, seriously? Is that why you bought the house, so you can have the best house?
Well, the keeping up with the Joneses is really a thing. And I actually have an interesting story to tell that has to do with you, Ida.
Oh my God. Okay.
So when I after buying that first house, I sold. After 3 years, I sold, and the amount of profit I made from selling that house, I sold because I wanted to buy with my husband so that we could start living together. But the amount of profit I made from that sale was proof beyond a reasonable doubt to me that real estate is a good investment. So when I sold that house, I decided to upgrade from my 1999 Camry. So I bought a 2009 Nissan Rogue. That was my upgrade. And I paid cash. For that. That car was $10,000. I paid cash for it.
Yes.
And so when I bought that Rogue, after a while, Ida bought a brand new, 2016 Rogue. And I looked at it and I was like, wow, Ida bought a brand new car. And then a year or two later, Ida told me, she had to trade in her Rogue for a Pathfinder. And she got a brand new Pathfinder. Again, brand new car. And I thought, wow, this is Ida who came to Canada after me. This is Ida who I coached to get her first job.
Yeah.
And now she's driving a brand new Pathfinder, and I'm here with my 2009 Rogue. I thought to myself, I thought, is it me who is not living bigly enough? But I knew I stuck with my fundamentals. I knew why I had bought that 2009 car, because I wanted to pay cash for it. And I knew why I was never going to buy a brand new car, because it depreciates the minute you leave the dealership.
And that's something
and like I said before, for me, a car is something that takes me from point A to B without going down. That's it.
Yeah.
And so I knew that putting money in a brand new car, at least based on where I was, income-wise or financial-wise, I wanted to have financial comfort without stressing over, being overstretched with money. So I knew the fundamentals of why I wouldn't buy a brand new car. So I am, admiring Ida's brand new cars. I'm wishing her the best. But little did I know that a few years later, Ida would have transformed into a financial coach where she's advising people not to do that.
Yeah. Oh my God. So I'm going to pick on that. Buying brand new cars was my biggest financial mistake ever. Because the thing is, when you walk into a dealership, nobody's telling you how much the car costs. You look at it, you look at it and you say, okay, how much is the monthly payment? And they say it is, oh, it can fit into my budget. But then when I was looking at it, I mean, right now it's paid. It's paid. I think the first car was like a Nissan Rogue 2016 or so. 2 years later, I traded it in. I got an upgrade. We got an upgrade because our car seats couldn't fit in the car like we needed them to. So, and because it's so easy to just drive over to a dealership and get a new car, we drove in. We got did an upgrade. So, and then when we started getting, my husband and I, when we started getting really intentional about our finances, I said, you know what? Let's pay off those things. It doesn't make sense to just be sending money every month to those places. And then that was the day we went in, we started looking to see how much is it that we owed on the car. That was the day it occurred to me that, oh my God, this car was actually $45,000. I never thought about it that way. I was thinking, okay, it's X amount I'm paying every month. I can afford it. I can
Right.
afford it. But when you put when you put the big picture and you say, okay, this is actually how much money I owe people. If I
Right.
lose my job today,
Yeah.
I'm screwed. I won't be able to make any of those payments. So we just didn't want to keep living with that fear of what if, what if, what if. So my husband and I, we've paid everything off. It took us 2 years. We've paid more than $60,000 in debt, but it's
Oh
done,
my
people.
God! Wow,
It's done.
$60,000 in 2 years.
Yeah, you can do it. You can do it. You find. I do this right now. I'm so passionate about it because people keep falling for the same mistakes every single day. My degree is in accounting. You're a CPA. We fall for those things. It's so easy to try to keep up.
So you
So
think about what you could do with that $60,000 if you didn't have that debt,
exactly,
right?
exactly. So never again, people. Never, never, never again.
So
So, and
that
the thing is, when we looked at it and we saw how much we actually owed on the car at the time, my husband and I we said, you know what? No, I told him, I said, I want to call the dealership. I want to give them back their car because I don't need this car. I said, no, no, we're not saying. I said, no, let's do it. So I picked up the phone. I called the dealership. I said, okay, this is how much I owe on the car, but I want to sell it back to you guys. How much are you going to give me for it? I was owing like, we paid some, so it was down to like 39,000 at the time. And they said they could pay me back 25,000 for the car. I said, well, you sold me a car. I've driven it for a couple of months. I want to sell it back to you and you're going to buy it for 25,000. And then
you're still gonna owe.
I'll keep paying for a car that I'm not using, and I still have to raise money for the next car. I said, you know what? No, we're gonna pay it off within 2 years. We set our goals, and we did it. So right now, when I'm talking, the kind of fresh air,
Right.
yeah.
So
So
I've never had to experience that, and I would say if when I left university, in my early 20s, I made a conscious decision for myself that I wanted to live a life of meaning, and that living a life of meaning was more important than the pursuit of money.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always been guided by that. I've always felt that, I don't want to be on my deathbed and wish that I had lived better or valued, life more compared to, getting into that rat race of finding more money.
Yeah.
And so I've always lived in a way that fits financially with where I'm at. Mm-hmm. So that I don't, the relief that you're feeling from having paid off all of those
oh my God.
all of those car monies, that's the feeling I've always wanted to live with.
Yeah.
So I've always, structured my life in a way that, my lifestyle comfortably fits with my finances. And when it comes to home ownership, you really have to in order not to fall into the trap of keeping up with the Joneses, you really have to determine for yourself personally, what you're comfortable with and what is enough for you. Not what is enough for somebody else who is looking at it, but what is enough for you. I would almost say, think of if you were living in an island with nobody on it. If you're living in an isolated island and it was just you, would that fancy house still mean what it means when there are other people looking at it?
Yeah.
So you really have to determine for yourself, not let it be influenced by other people, what is important to you and what level
Yeah.
you're comfortable with. And
Yeah.
I think the other reason people end up in the trap of buying what they can't afford is they're buying hoping that, with time they'll be able to afford it. When you take a mortgage, that monthly amount that you have to pay, you're going to be paying that for the next 25 to 30 years, depending on the amortization you took. The only
Yeah.
thing that's going to make that amount change is if the interest rate goes up or down. But you have that loan and you're going to have to pay the bank for that long.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people take it hoping that, with time they're going to make more money, and they don't think about the fact that it's possible that somebody loses a job during that time. It's possible that you're having another child and there's more expenses, and you have to go on maternity leave, you're on less income.
Yeah.
And I think people also don't think long term when they're getting a house. Just like when you were getting your car, you were just thinking monthly payments. You
Yeah.
weren't of the 45 or $50,000 that the car was. You were just thinking monthly payment. If I can do
Yeah.
this monthly payment, then I'm okay. So I think maybe some people don't think about, in 30 years from now, am I going to have enough to retire on?
Yeah. Yeah. Retirement is
Or,
that's one of the things that because it's so far out there, a lot of people are not
yeah,
even thinking about it.
right. They're just thinking in the present, I have the big fancy house, everybody's going to be talking about me. And they're not thinking what happens, just like one of your last guests, when Femi was on, she talked about how she's seeing how much more expensive it is. Now that her kids are older, she's seeing how much more expensive it is to upkeep the kids when they
Yeah.
get older. So people aren't thinking that far out when they get these big mortgages. People aren't thinking, okay, what if the market crashes tomorrow, like it did in the States?
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to decide for yourself what your comfort level is, and not think about what other people are thinking and not compare with other people. It's not easy to do, but if you can do it, if you have the discipline to do it, then I think the less stress you have about money, the better life you get to live.
That is very true. And people are going to say money is not important, money is not important, or money doesn't buy happiness. But you cannot physically take money and go buy happiness because there's no such thing as happiness you can buy. True.
Mm-hmm.
But the point is money, I said it last week, money affects everything that is important to you. It affects every single thing that is important. And if you're not intentional about it, like you can slide into debt. You can just
Mm-hmm.
accidentally get into debt. But for you to get out, you need to actually do something different. You need to plan for it. You need to make it happen. It's not just going to happen by itself. You had a goal to buy a house.
Yeah. One thing I've
Took every
observed
step.
also when it comes,
Mm-hmm.
a humble, a modest house versus a fancy house. Um, just in my general observation, a lot of times I think a house is not the fanciness of it, it's how much people feel at home in it.
Mm-hmm.
I remember, when my son was playing soccer during 1 year, they would often they had certain houses that they would go to, that the houses where the place that was the happening place, where they
Yeah.
would have the most fun and go to the park and come back for a snack and go to the park and come back again. In my observation, it wasn't the fanciest houses that had that warmth and welcome and everything. It didn't matter how fancy the house was. What mattered was the experiences that the kids got, how much at home they felt,
Yeah.
and how much fun they had just being in those houses. So I think my point is that I believe that it's not how fancy your house is, it's how much you're fulfilled in having it in your own life, and how much people feel at home
Yeah.
when they come
Yeah.
there.
I know for Canada here, it's not very common where we have people competing it with about who has the best houses. But I've seen that in the US a
Oh
lot.
yes, in the US it's a
People
big
people will buy a house and then they're gonna have to work like 3 jobs just to be able to meet up with the payment for that
Yeah,
house.
in the
Why did
end,
you buy the
you're
house in the first place when you're not gonna live in it?
right.
You buy a house and then you have a car, and there's people, even all the way in Calgary, Alberta, the people who have said, I'm only going to buy a Mercedes, and they buy a brand new Mercedes every other year, or they just go straight up. And then their insurance amount, the amount they pay on insurance is the amount you'll be paying on rent. People are paying $600 in insurance on the car. And
I just think the more you spend, the less experience you get out of life. Like the
yeah.
more your lifestyle is more than what you can afford, I feel
Hmm.
um the less of a life of
Less
meaning.
fulfilling your life
Yes.
is.
Just think about, like, I'll go back again to the relief you're feeling from having paid off those scars.
Yeah.
Imagine if you had never gotten into that, you would have had that wonderful feeling
Yeah.
throughout.
Yeah. 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 It's nothing beats that. You live like no one else for a little while. You do everything you can to get out of debt. And then later it's like you're always smiling and people say, but why is this one always smiling?
Yeah,
Oh,
that
amazing.
inner fulfillment in life is, yes, money can't buy you happiness, but when you're not stressed about money, it
You're
certainly
happier.
contributes to happiness.
Exactly. Exactly. So quit keeping up with the Joneses, people. It takes a lot of inner strength for you to not worry about what other people are thinking about you.
Yes, it
And
does.
unfortunately, this is the I think I was talking to you about this yesterday. Back home, it's a cash-based system, meaning
Hmm.
you don't spend money that you don't have. But it's not necessarily because we've built the habit of that. We've not built that habit. It's just because we didn't have access to the money. So we're forced to not even spend the money you don't have
Right.
because you didn't have it. And then
Yeah,
when you
I've
feel
always wondered how come when we left from Cameroon, how come people don't use that same mentality? Like, if in
yeah,
Cameroon you didn't have access to credit, how
yeah.
come all of a sudden the access to credit makes you think that you have
Yeah, because
a
they've
lot of money?
never formed the habit of not using that. They didn't use it back home because they didn't have access to it. It's not because you'd formed the willpower or you had a plan to say, okay, this is what I'm going to do with my money when I have it. And when you get here, and then all of a sudden you have access to all of this money and you start thinking it's free money, I'm just going to use it. You've never formed that discipline, but you particularly, you had that discipline from back home. So even when you got here, it was just natural for you to keep doing the same
Yeah, it
thing.
was natural. I didn't want to owe anybody money, and I just knew that you don't spend what's not yours. It
Yeah.
was as simple as that.
Yeah, yeah. No, for us getting into car loans, it was just because of the way that the community makes it seem
Yeah,
normal. Everybody has
yeah.
a car payment. It's normal. Just that was the normal thing to do. But I found very few people who don't have a car payment. You're one of
Mm.
the few people who doesn't have a payment that I know. The very, very few people who don't have a car payment. Some people actually take pride in upgrading every other year
Yeah,
because they want to
permanent,
have the
being
latest
permanently on a
model.
lease.
Yeah, yeah. So it takes a lot of inner strength, of inner fulfillment to say, okay, you know what, all of those things are not important to me. I'm more I'm
Yeah,
more
and I don't care what anybody thinks about my my 2009 Rogue. Serving me well, and I'm happy.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Amazing. All right. So what advice do we have to give to people who might be looking to, let's say there's a single mom out there who kind of feels that she's trapped and she doesn't have a way to move forward? What advice would you give to a
No,
person like
I,
that?
I have so much that I can say on that. The first thing I would say is, don't think that home ownership is reserved for a special class of people.
Mm-hmm.
Don't. Sometimes home ownership is something that in North America, it's a time proven foundation for creating wealth.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody can have access to that. So don't think that it's for, in some European countries, not as much, but in the North American economy, home ownership is a foundation for building wealth. Because not only from the fact that it's an asset that appreciates year over year, but also from the fact that once you build equity in it, and also from having it as collateral, it opens up the opportunity to have access to credit for investment purposes. And so that's how you build on it. And of course, if you ever get to sell like I did, I mean, the amount of profit I made from selling, if I had never bought a house, I would have never seen that kind of money. So it's a time-tested means of building wealth, and people should not think that it's for a special class of people, and they should not think that you need a whole ton of money to be able to get one. If I could do it, by the time I bought, my income had gone up from 33,000 to 35,000. But I was still a single mom with a child and no other financial support except for what I was getting from the government. So
the interesting thing is that you were able to qualify for a mortgage with 35,000 as an income. That's the interesting thing, because some people think that you really have to.
$210,000 mortgage.
Yeah, but it's right now houses are more expensive, but you had a very beautiful house. I can tell you that your house was super. Like, even had a pool in the backyard. Like, your house was very beautiful.
Yeah, I have to just mention also one of the things that it took a lot of courage. It took a lot of courage for me to, aside from being approved. I was only approved at the variable rate, by the way. That's one of the reasons why my approval even went through, because they used the variable rate, which is always lower than the fixed rate. So they used the lowest rate possible, and I got approved like by a thin margin, but I got in. And
it was probably also more possible because you didn't have any other debt.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
that too. And I didn't have any monthly payments for anything.
Yeah, you didn't have any payments, no debt. You were like straight from Cameroon with your money now, but with a credit history.
Yeah, it took a lot of courage to go into that kind of undertaking as a single parent, because I had my one income, and it was a risk I was taking, but I knew that I had that financial discipline. But one thing that did help, you talked about the beautiful backyard and the pool. One thing that helped build that helped make that possible was the fact that I was living with my friend and sister, who had also just come from Cameroon. I was living with my older sister when I first came to Montreal, but she moved to Alberta. And so, at the time that I was house searching, I didn't have, I wasn't going to have that support of splitting, accommodation costs with another person.
Yeah.
But at the time, my friend and sister came from Cameroon, and I happened to, get her a job in the same place where I was working, and she was okay with us living together. So it was a great arrangement because we did share some costs. So that helped. That helped in addressing some of the unforeseen costs that you get.
Yeah, it kind of brought down your cost having, let's call it a roommate. You had somebody there who was living with you.
Yeah.
She wasn't on the mortgage per se, but she was living with you, and you guys were able to split costs. So yeah.
So that helped, especially because I got a new house. And the reason I bought a new construction was because the prices were lower. Existing houses were selling in the 260s, and the brand new house was 210. But what I didn't know, and this is, advice for anybody who's thinking in that direction, what I didn't know was that when you buy a new construction, they're giving you a shell of a house, and you kind of have to complete it. You have to do the driveway and do the grass in the back and do the fence and, everything right down to the window coverings. You don't realize how much those things cost, the lighting fixtures, the handle for the towels in the bathroom. So they just give you a shell of a house, and you kind of have to fill it in. Yeah. Whereas when you buy an existing house, you already have all of those things. Yeah. So it did help that I had someone I was living with with whom we shared costs.
And it also helped that you had experience from Cameroon, because we all go through certain kinds of hardships or some kind of life experiences back home that when you explain to people here, they don't understand it. Or you see somebody here complaining because the light went off for a couple of hours. But you're used to living in a house without electricity for a couple of days. sometimes. So I'm not saying that's okay, but I'm saying that life threw those challenges at you and you've gone through them. And
Yeah,
then when you
so
come over to a new country and you get a little challenge and then you fall back and you're like, oh, life is so hard. Is it as hard as it was when you were back home?
so
Can you
it's
use
interesting you
that?
say it's interesting you say that because remember the Canadian I was talking to at the time who said I'm never going to, be approved for a mortgage, you haven't
Yes.
even been here 1 year. When I had to make the decision also about what kind of house to buy. Should I buy a single family house or a semi-detached or the condo? So, he said to me, why? Because I was leaning more towards getting a single family house. And he said to me, why get a ship when you can just get a boat? So, in his opinion, when you're just starting out, get a condo, which is small, it's manageable. Don't go and burden yourself with a house. And in the way that he was explaining it, the good thing with a condo is that, the condo fees take care of things like the snow and the lawn care and things like that. And I was thinking to myself, I'm coming from Cameroon where I grew up, our compound had a number of tenants. And I used to take care of those tenants. I used to take care of about 13 tenants. And I was the one that people would call when, the toilet is broken or the roof is leaking. And I was the one taking care of making sure that the front yard was clean and that the grass on the road leading to the house was cut. I would, participate in cutting it myself.
Yeah.
And for anybody who went to Cast Bambili, I'm sure you will remember how for manual labor, we had these big lawns with trees planted in squares, and the manual the discipline master would just tell you that's your square. You had to cut that grass in a big square footage area with a lance.
Yeah.
And hope that your lance was sharp enough to to do the job. But and we went to the farm. You would trek 45 minutes or an hour to get to the farm. You would work that farm and trek another hour to get home.
Yeah.
So we're coming from that background. So for somebody to be telling me that cutting the grass in a small backyard this
With
big
a machine.
with a machine, for somebody to be telling me that that's a challenge, like that for me, it was nothing.
Yeah.
So I had to remember that this person who is trying to advise me to get this kind of thing, his point of reference and his experience is very different from mine. And the things that he considered hard to me were just nothing.
Yeah.
And so we have to learn to take the strength of the experience that we had growing up and use it here. Use that strength of experience, to let yourself know that you have that resilience and you have that that ability that is a step up from somebody who has not had that experience.
Yeah.
Use it.
Yeah. We have they usually say everything in this life happens for a reason, and we don't understand why those things are happening. But the point is, when you find yourself in a certain kind of position, you're able to go through because of the things you have experienced in the past, because of your past experiences, because of past conditions you found yourself in. Your resilience is a little bit different from people who just give up for every single little thing.
Yeah.
Like people are
clearing the snow for me was no biggie.
Yeah.
If I walk farm, I can clear snow.
And you could pay somebody to clear the snow. You just have to say, okay, I don't want to clear snow, so I'm going to put it in my budget every single summer season. I'll pay somebody to clear the snow for me. That's an option. So
the other reason I didn't think a condo would make sense for me was at the time in my apartment, my next door neighbor would complain incessantly about my 2-year-old running around.
Mm-hmm.
And, I was thinking to myself, what am I supposed to do? Tie him to a chair? He's 2. He doesn't walk. He runs.
Yeah.
So I used to get these incessant complaints. And I thought, why would I, if I'm going to go into something as big as, a mortgage, why would I go for something that has the same problems I was having in an apartment?
Yeah. That's so true. That is so true. There's somebody here who went to Kasbambili with you. Istanbul. Istanbul.
Apollo. Yes, we remember those that manual labor.
And this is Bay. She's confirming what the neighbors are gonna complain about. She also has a 2-year-old. So
yeah,
it's those things.
When I was looking, I also there was along the way came a financial advisor who was pushing me towards a duplex where you live on one level and you rent the other level,
Yeah.
which is a really, really good investment. I have to say it's a very good investment idea where your tenants in the upper level or in the basement is paying you rent and you use that to offset the cost of your mortgage. It was a very good idea, but it didn't work for me because as a single mom, I thought to myself, if that tenant doesn't pay the rent in 1 month, I'll be completely screwed.
Yeah, yeah,
As
because your
much as it
income will
was
not be able to cover the mortgage for the
yeah, I
two.
didn't have a second income source, and I
Yeah.
didn't want to go into something that would stress me financially at any point. But
Okay.
for anybody listening, the idea of a duplex where you can get rent for one of the units is a really good investment idea. There are even people I've spoken with. I spoke with a lady whose family came here from Iran, and she said what they did when they came was they all got together, like she and her siblings and her parents, and they bought a duplex together. So the parents were living on the main floor, she and her siblings were living on the upper floor, and then they had some other family members in the basement. So they pooled their resources and they got that, and then when everybody got more financially independent, they went and bought their individual homes.
That's a
So
very good option. There's also the option of if you're with somebody, like if you have two incomes in the family, you
mhm,
can, it's very easy for you guys to plan to buy a house. You told me about a friend of yours who came here as well, and that's what they did. So what you can do essentially, people, it's if you can live on one person's income,
right,
you're saving up the other person's income completely.
just
Just
like
put it
I was
aside.
able to live on my single income and take care of my son.
Yeah.
So if you feel that you can live on one person's income and then save 100% of the other person's income, is an effective way to build that down payment.
Yeah, but that will mean that the two of you are on the same page financially and you're not having
Right.
the mentality of my money is for me and your money is to take care of the house and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
We really need to shift our mentalities. Kennedy and I were talking about last time, this mentality shift that has to happen. You can't keep doing the things you've been doing and you expecting to have different results.
Yeah. Another way of making sure that of easily, saving money is if you get a raise at work, instead of increasing your lifestyle, just save that difference in net salary.
Yeah.
Because before you got that raise,
You
you
were
were
living fine.
already living fine. So
Yeah.
when you get that extra money, channel it to, like I said, me and my automated savings accounts with Tangerine, channel it to a different account when your expenses drop. So, as an example, when your child goes from daycare to elementary school, sometimes daycare is a lot more expensive than the after school care program in elementary school. That difference that you would have been paying for daycare, channel it to savings. Or when your child goes from elementary school to high school, where for sure you don't have after school care anymore because the child can come home on their own and stay at home,
Yeah.
channel what
You
you were
channel that.
paying for the after school care, channel it to savings. So there are a lot of ways in which you can you know have that discipline to put money together for that down payment.
Yeah, we're coming up on 1 hour already. Actually, we're already at 1 hour, so we need to start giving final words to our listeners. If you have any questions for Olivia, she's just here for today. Maybe she'll come back. I don't know, but if you have a question, please put your questions in the comments. We've had lots and lots of people commenting, and that's very good. We appreciate that. The last thing I want to touch on is home ownership when in debt. If you should be getting a home when you're in debt, Olivia, I don't know if you want to talk about that before I dive in.
For me personally, I wouldn't advise it because you're just adding, well, I don't want to say adding debt upon debt to debt, because the debt on a home is of a different caliber, I would say,
Yes.
because number one, it's your accommodation cost that you have to pay anyway. Number two, it's on an asset that appreciates, and number three, it gives you access to investment capital. But I feel I don't identify too much with this question because I've never had that experience of having to
Of
clear up
having that.
debt.
Okay. So
It's
let the people
I
who've
wouldn't.
been in debt tell you.
Then when I think about it, there are homeowners today who do have a lot of debt. Like you say, you're talking about doctors who um, earn a lot of money and still have debt. Personally,
Yeah.
I wouldn't advise it because
Mhm.
consumer debt is just it's very costly, and rather than put that towards the mortgage, I think it makes financial sense to clear up the debt that has a higher cost
Yeah. All right, so
first.
I'm gonna go in there. So essentially, you should not be buying a house if you have any other debt. You should not be getting into a mortgage. So the steps, what I teach you guys is, first of all, you have to get intentional with your money. So you learn how to live below your means. So you start putting money aside. If you have consumer debt, so you have a car, you have credit card debt, you still have any of those, pay them off. Pay them off in the shortest possible time. Find extra jobs, pick up extra hours, whatever you need to do in the shortest possible time, you pay that off. And then you save up an emergency fund. So you would have at least 3 to 6 months of your income saved up in an emergency fund. So you know while you have a house, if something happens, if you lose a job, something happens, you're not scrambling to see if you're going to lose your house next. So pay off your
Right.
debt, save up and have an emergency fund, 3 to 6 months at least of your living expenses, and then you start saving money to buy your house. And just always have that emergency fund saved there because you never know. When you have a house, things just happen. Things could happen in your house, and you're like, oh, okay, now I need to go get a credit card to pay for this. But you need to plan for them. You need to plan for them. So that's what I have to say. And as usual, I'm available for one-on-one coaching. I don't know, Olivia, if people want to reach out to you directly, if you're okay with people reaching out to you.
Oh, sure, of course.
Yeah. So just let people know how they can reach you.
Oh, the easiest way is through WhatsApp.
Okay.
And
Or let not don't share your WhatsApp number to everybody. But if you need to reach Olivia, unless you want to, but if you need to reach Olivia, you can let me know and I'll ask
yes,
her to share her number with you.
yeah, that would work.
Yeah. But for me, you can always reach me on Facebook. I have my business WhatsApp number right there on Facebook. And I have my website, Azefor.com. Just go over there and book an appointment. We can always go one on one. I really want to see more and more people winning with money. There's information out there that we don't have. There's information
Yeah,
out there that
there's a
we
lot
need
of
to have.
there's still a lot of information that I could share. There are a lot of unpleasant surprises as a first time buyer. There are a lot of things that I only got to find out by chance because nobody told me. This is
Yeah,
one thing in this country. If you don't ask questions, nobody volunteers the information to you.
yeah,
I didn't know about mortgage insurance. I didn't know that when you put 5% down, I had put my $10,000 down payment on a 210,000 purchase price. So I expected my mortgage balance to be 200,000. When
yeah,
I got my first statement, I look at it and my mortgage balance was 209,000. Like,
yeah,
what happened to my down payment?
yeah,
And
yeah.
that's when they told me about mortgage insurance. Oh, you put your down payment was less than whatever, 30 or 35%.
And they didn't volunteer that information to you. The
Oh
person
no, they
just
didn't tell
wanted
me
to
that.
sell. They just wanted a mortgage. But the truth is, 5% is very little. If you put 5% down, then they impose this mortgage insurance, which doesn't do
Yeah.
anything for you, but it's covering the bank.
Right.
That mortgage insurance doesn't do anything for you. So it's
And
better
you're
to just
paying that, it's
delay.
part of your loan balance. So you're paying it back
Yes.
with all the interest as well.
Yeah. Exactly.
The other thing I would advise people is to know your numbers. Like when
Mm-hmm.
my mortgage, if you ask me how much I've paid in principal in my mortgage currently, I can tell you because I have it on my spreadsheet. And
Yeah. Oh, you're a CPA.
because
So.
so when I got my first statement, I compared it with my spreadsheet. I knew exactly what my biweekly payment was supposed to be and exactly how much my loan balance is supposed to be. So I'm doing this reconciliation and it's not adding up. It was off by $2.30. I called the bank. I said, "Where is my money?" And they told me, "Oh, each time we withdraw your your biweekly payment, we take off $2.30 in admin fees." And I'm like, "You're taking money from me, and then you're charging me for taking money from me." But how many people would know that they're paying $230 every time that they make a payment? So when it was time to transfer my mortgage to the next house that we bought, I made sure I told them I don't want to pay that fee, and they took it off. But if I didn't know about it, I would just have continued paying it for the next, 10 years and not realize it. So you have to know your numbers, because there's there's numbers in there. If you were to ask the bank to deposit $2 in your account every month, they wouldn't.
Yeah.
But they would charge it to you.
Yeah.
So $2 is not a small amount.
It's not. It adds up. Or you're going to be paying that for 30 years.
And you shouldn't if you don't have to.
So I'm seeing a few questions. This is a question from Hilda. She's asking, would you prefer paying off school loan or getting into mortgage if you had the opportunity? School, you have to pay your student loan first, especially in America. I'm going to bring somebody on the show she's going to be talking to us about student loans. But especially in America, the student loan rates are insane. Pay it off before mortgage, definitely.
So I watched this Netflix series called, what was the series, that title of that?
Money
Netflix
Explained.
series?
Money Explained.
Yes. And the credit card part didn't really surprise me. There was nothing new there. The student loan part was the shocker for me, because I didn't realize that interest on student loans is compounded just like with credit cards. So when I heard the story from this person who gave their testimony, where they had been paying off their student loans for, I think it was like 6 or 7 years. And when they looked at the balance, it hadn't moved.
Yeah.
Because the interest gets compounded. And even when you ask them to pause the payments, if you're in a financial situation where you can't pay and you ask them to put a pause on it, the interest is still compounding. That was a shocker to me.
Yeah. So that show on Netflix, Money Explained, if you have Netflix, go watch it. But I'll bring somebody on who's going to be talking to us about student loans. She paid off a huge amount of debt. You don't even want to hear the number. It's more than a mortgage. That's America for you people. Let me see if we have here. Would love to know about those unpleasant surprises on another segment. I'm sure Ida has a lot to say about that too. Would love to know more. Yes, I will.
Come back and share those if needed.
So Yanks is asking if we can share a sample spreadsheet to us if possible.
Oh, of course. It's I have a spreadsheet for calculating the housing cost and my personal costs, and another one for it's they're actually available online. If you do mortgage calculator online, it gives you the breakdown per payment. It gives you the breakdown for the 25 years or 30 years of the mortgage, so you know what your balance is at any given time, based on the interest rate that you have. But I can share a sample.
Okay, so we're gonna, I don't know, I'm gonna have to send that to people by email, people who want it. So if you could go to my page and just send me a message from there with your email, then we can send that to you, or to my website and send by email and we can send that to you, definitely. All right, amazing. I don't see any other questions. It's been a wonderful 1 hour here. We're so happy we had Olivia sharing her experiences. There's so much more information that we were not able to squeeze into this segment. So reach out, people, reach out. There's more information that I can't put all here, but yeah, so much more. Any last word?
Oh, well, last word, I would say if you want to buy your first home, it's really two basic things. It's information and having a plan.
Yes.
Get all the information you need and have a plan, a definitive plan that's going to get there. And make sure you talk with people who share your vision. Some people can be some people can kill the spirit just from the negativity, and talk with people who have been there. Talk with people who can inspire you and who really see with your vision and can guide you properly. And get your information directly from the source as much as possible.
Absolutely. And that's all we try to do here on the show. We share information to motivate you, to inspire you, so you can take action in your personal finances. Nobody can do it for you. Only you can do it. All right. Amazing. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. That's the only payment we're asking for. Just like, share, and subscribe. And have an amazing day. I'll see you again in 2 weeks, guys. Bye.
Thank you all. Bye. Bye, Aida.